Welcome back, Rangers. This is David with Fairmare's Rangers, and we got the Swiss Guard looking pretty dapper, looking pretty sweet. The drummer doesn't look like he knows what the heck's going on, but we do, thankfully. This is a 4v4 matchup, multiplayer, on our 4v4 tournament. Nation versus nation, and if you haven't been able to notice, it's France versus Spain. That's right. We're going to have an epic fight of these undefeated teams in week 3 of our tournament. And unfortunately, the French Cav does a suicide frontal assault into the Spanish forces here. Not wise. Trying to get their long range units, trying to do damage on them, only ending up killing 9. And I think a lot of the 9 kills done there was by their own light dragoons, because at that time it looked like he only killed 2 of the Cazadors. Not a good move there. One of the Cavs should come back, but he's going to be half strength. That's a pretty bad loss to start the game off. Like, literally start the game off. Lose your Cav. So Cav superiority now in the Spanish hands. It's going to come back to haunt you, France. I do happen to think it's going to come back to haunt you. All right, look at these Wallen guards looking pretty cool. Nice. Spanish positions. Now, a lot of the Spanish positions have already taken hiding spots in that forest. That's why you don't see any units there. Up here on the hill, they're still moving into position, so you won't see them as hidden. They are on the move. And there is a lot of them. Look at them. They are determined to gain the strategic ground up here on the hill. This is the highest point of the map, so they're wanting to secure that position. And you can see here the French are holding on to the downslope over here. Position my mic a little bit better. Okay. So since the player in the center on the top is hanging back, I'm playing in this position with the French flag with the green. And I decided to move my rifles against the Spanish player at the bottom since he's moving out. And like I said, you can see that nobody's opposing me. Well, they are opposing me, but they're hanging back in the woodland. So since they're doing that, I'm going to get my rifles active and get them shooting at the Spanish player over here. My ally, who's a friend of mine, Gunny, is going to move his militia forward. And we're going to try and get some shots off on these Spanish Cazadors here. Try and knock down their long range. See if we can get a good start down here at this part of the battlefield. As you can see, 4 TLRs versus 2 Cazadors. Let's see how that goes down. Our militia is taking the brunt of this assault, and we get some great shots off. And we take the Cazadors down to 42 and 46. So not a great amount, but we did get residual damage on the lines behind. So that is nice. And over here, our ally on the flank is holding the center portion. I'll go back to that in a second. There's some stuff happening over here. As you can see, we got some action in the woods up here on the slope of the hill. The Spanish are determined to take all of the hill. They're getting some sweet line fight going on here. Trying to take this woodland. Man, I do love the action in Empire. It is super awesome. So we can see the devastation here. But you can see the Spanish have brought quite a few units to bear against only 2 French lines. So nice positioning by the Spanish player to maximize his firepower against the French. As you can see, there's another line over here too. They're lobbing some grenades at him. They're going to clear this woodland. Golly! I mean, that's an epic explosion there. And both of these units are going to rout off the field. So the Spanish, as we see them clearing those woods like they're dusting or spraying for insects, laying a bit of fog down there, if you will, with those grenades going off. And they clear those woods out. There is one unit still, but they'll be able to push him out directly. Down here, we still have our long-range superiority at this part of the battlefield, but we're having some issues over here on the flank, and I'll show you. Okay, we got 2 full-strength militia rushing in, and this is the same player that did the unfortunate cav assault. This is also going to be unfortunate. As you can see, all these Wallen Guards are going to start blasting these militia. Luckily, these are lower tier units, obviously militia, but they were full strength, and I think it's a wasteful move to just try to counter one militia that's coming up, and you only kill 13, and you lose a militia in the process. Not a good trade-off there. Not a good trade-off at all. So, having some issues on that flank. Over here, getting some gunfire exchange. Now the Spanish light dragoons are going to come out, and they are going to get a shot off on my militia, but it's not a really great one, so I did come out of that pretty fortunate. And that gives me time to whittle down the Spanish line up here on the slope of the hill. I am getting shot by the cazadors behind, but I am still going to put down some pretty good fire on this Spanish line. Yeah, pretty much whittle him down pretty good. Then I'm going to pull out of that fight. Now, over here, everything is still stable, so we're going to continue to try to whittle down the Spanish over here in the center. But the flank is becoming concerning, so yeah, look at this. These units back here, too far back. Too far back. You got to get them up so that your whole force is together. Now, the Spanish player against me on the center is committing the same crime because he's not pushing up with the rest of his allies. The other 3 Spanish players are pulling up, committing everything, and he is not. So there's no pressure being put against me. That's allowing me to reinforce, and it's actually going to help us quite a bit. As you can see here, the Spanish player in the center here is going to start making a push. My riflemen, my TLRs, are right in front. I see him crossing a guard over, so I'm going to want to take that because I can kill some of his cazadors, plus some guards, plus some lines behind. That's a great payoff. It's shoot at 1 unit and get residual damage off of 3. You can't beat those odds. Okay, so here again, the Spanish player in front of me only moving out his light dragoons to oppose my militia. He did move some units up the slope of the hill, so he is pushing out there. I think he feels the need to be cautious, but cautious sometimes can cause you problems in the game. We'll see if that comes back to haunt the Spanish later in this matchup. Now, you can see the Spanish player here is setting up for a nice little push here. You can see the formation. He's got 3 grenadiers in back, 2 guards, and 2 lines on either side, and a militia that's going to be a screening force for his more important units, which are the guards and the grenadiers. He's got his 2 lines on either flank, laying down covering fire on these 2 militia, which are holding the flanks, which are cheap, inexpensive units, so using them as a screen for his 2 important guards. And we're going to see how this French player handles this assault, because this is not always an easy assault to happen, especially you don't want to shoot the militia, but in this case he is choosing to shoot the militia. The reason I say you don't want to shoot the militia is if the Spanish player moved those 2 guards up on either side of that militia, they would have got free shots on the Swiss guard and the Mason de Rolle here. Luckily, the French player did move his cav up and got a great shot on him, so he gets both of his guards out of there clean before the guards come up, or the grenadiers come up and throw their volleys. That's probably too much over-reliance on the grenadiers in that case, getting the throws, versus a skilled player. And now he's going to take some losses of this carabiner. He does at least get a shot off and gets a pretty decent chunk out of that guard. Gets a decent because they were full strength. Over here he's getting pressured quite heavily on the slope. And he's going to continue to get some fire and roll his forces back. Down here in the center, you can see that heavy pressure has been applied. My ally here has lost the unit, and down here it's going from okay to now complete disaster. And you can see our ally here has 3 full-strength Swiss guards, and they are going to rush 3 light dragoons, or is it carabiners, up. They're going to get shots on these guards, and I mean they take them down fairly decently. I mean that's pretty bad. I mean, you got to have screening. If you're gonna fall back, you got to have something to cover your fire, especially at the beginning of the game. Late game, I can see it because you don't have the units to help cover for you. But in the early part of the game, you got to give yourself covering fire if you're gonna fall back. You can't just fall all your units back at once. It's like in the movies, like, cover me. You can't do that without covering your units, guys. Okay, here we go. French player, that's me. I'm gonna take heavy losses on my line on the flank. I was thinking he would reload and get a volley off, but no such luck. So I'm gonna lose quite a bit off that flanking line, but I do get him out. Down here, I'm trying to hold the flank versus 3 units. My ally is a little bit too far back, so he's not providing me with any assistance. And you can see I'm taking volleys from 2 lines, and a militia is coming up to screen my fire so that his lines don't take as much damage. And that's when my allies' guards do start getting them. Now, I did anticipate that, so I moved the bulkly over to try to get some shots in the flank, but that's a tough spot to get shots. Now you can see my ally has moved units to help support our ally here on the flank, but it is not going well because our opponent here has massed up all his guards to the side. As you can see, there's Wallen guards and Guardia infantry, and they are just pummeling our poor French souls here in the center. And look at all these units in the back. They're laying back, and these 2 Cazadors are just popping off shots on the Swiss guards. And the Swiss guards aren't even involved. They're not really getting anything done there. It's a highly expensive unit. I think it's like $1380 or something like that. It's a very expensive unit to get wasted down like that. All right, so here we go. All right, my ally here is under pretty immense pressure. As you can see, he's taking on fire from a guard in 2 lines. And nicely done by the Spanish player here, using that little slope to shoot over his guards. Really nicely done. And here in the center, you can see it went from bad to worse, as now all the line are gone, just left with the cav that was helping behind. And my ally is going to get a cav charge off. And I did tell him I'd bring my cav over to help, so we knew that the Spanish player here in the center was getting thin, so we are going to launch a nice little attack, cav assault on them. Now, I did anticipate wanting to charge those Cazadors, but I seen them laying the stake, so I divert over here to this Spanish line here and get a hit on them. And then we're just going to sweep all through his lines here in the center. As you can see, Gunny coming around, so he's hitting them from the side, from the stake line. I'm hitting them from the other side. And yeah, we're just routing out all these guys here in the center. Great cav charge. Our other ally, the one that was on the flank, is going to bring his let's see, Chausseau Cheval, and he is going to try and get a charge in, but he ends up getting in the back of me, unfortunately. So now you can see our cav just pummeling them, and we're going to start pulling our cav out of this fight. We don't want to lose our cav, and we are starting to lose some of it, so we're going to start pulling out of it. Over here, you see it's pretty much where our lines of defense have gone to. We are starting to fall back a little bit more off the slope of the hill. You can see we've surrendered that completely to them, except for that edge. But we are still holding the ground pretty good. And over here, we still have some of our ally in the Spanish, trying to get them to pull that cav out before we lose it. And I do see this Spanish line topping off over here, so I'm going to try and get some shots off on it. And over here on the flank, you can see that the status quo is still going on. The Swiss guard's still getting shot down by the Cazadors. Nothing here to support in the center. He should be moving here. He's basically being held at bay by 2 Cazadors and 1 line versus 3 Swiss guards. And his Cazadors, which are too far back. He should be exchanging rifle fight in a skirmish fight instead of just getting blasted down by Swiss guards. That's pretty bad. Now here's where I was saying I'm going to top off this line with my carabiners. So get that shot in. My ally does then have an opportunity to pull his cav out. Unfortunately losing 1. And then another 2 cav do route out. So unfortunately my other 2 allies didn't get as much of their cav out. Up here at the top of the hill, Spanish light dragoons coming up, getting shots on almost full strength TLRs and just blasting them. One down to half strength, the other one down to 22. So down to 3rd strength. That was a really great shot. Really well done there. So the Spanish cav doing a nice job up at the top of the hill. Other than that, the French are really holding well up here. And yeah, you can see we got them pretty stymied. This is a pretty good position for us to hold. I did bring my rifles back up to try to deter them from making a move at the top. So here's my TLRs now up at this top position. And I'm whittling down this full strength line, just like they did our allies Swiss Guard. Now here I'm going to try to make an assault to help hold down this. I was hoping my ally would come out and top them off, but that didn't happen, and the Spanish are reinforcing from their center to help reinforce against my assault, which is unfortunate. I am going to move my TLRs back, as the Spanish player that was getting shot didn't like that, so he brought his line up. So we basically wasted out that whole Spanish line. That was 120 between my TLRs and my line infantry. Took him down to 41, routed him off the field. He will probably come back, but that Spanish line has gotten no kills. You can see here I am about to rout one of the Spanish units, but I am taking damage. Got the Grenadiers about to line up and start getting some shots. I did move the Grenadiers down to reinforce. We don't really show the French Grenadiers too much. Let's get some action with the French Grenadiers. This is a pretty sweet unit. You see, Grenadiers, we don't really see them getting the shots off too much. We mostly see them throwing grenades. But Grenadiers get a lot of shots off, but you got to be careful about expending all their ammo, because once you expend their ammo, they can no longer throw grenades. So you have to be really careful about that. And they only 60 men, they do rip through ammo pretty quick. They do get 15, but like I said, if you're going up against a big unit, you can wear them down, but you're going to be out of ammo. All right, so Spanish player bringing up an assault with 5 line infantry versus these 2 Swiss Guard. Now, this is actually where our ally on the flank can really start making some headway against his opponent. These 2 Swiss Guard entrenched in these woods can really do some damage. And you'll see he's going to start really inflicting some heavy casualties on the Spanish here, which is really nice. Now the Spanish player is going to start moving out, the one that was getting the most damage. He's going to try and move in the rest. Unfortunately, my ally is going to move the Swiss Guards out of that fight, which is a fight he should have taken. This is a fight you want. Even though you're outnumbered, you're in an entrenched spot with super fast firing units, and you had 2 TLRs to back them up. That's a fight you want. You could really do a difference. Even if you lose your units there, you're going to really even up the odds. Over here, we've been pushed back quite a bit, as you can see. But the Spanish player is now starting to overextend himself. He is trying to continue his push with his Grenadiers. And you can see here he's going to get another lob of a throw. Let's get in close. Should be a good explosive shot. Oh my God. I think he blew his hat off, man. All right. So, over here, there's only 5 units, so they're not going to fare well with that. The rest of the Spanish units, look at the you know, if I wasn't trying to hold so much ground, I could really sweep uphill and sweep in behind them. But the fact is, I'm having to hold off this Spanish player in the center here, because our bottom player is lost so bad. Otherwise, I could push uphill against them. But you can see, I mean, yeah, it's a bad situation down here. So I'm having to stabilize that. But the Spanish player in the centers got to. Well, we'll get to that later. As you see, I'm going to top off another line infantry. That Spain moves out here with my Bulkleys. Cazadors are getting a little bit of shots in on them, but I am going to get my shots in, I can promise you. Top them off there. Now we're going to pull out, get back in the woodlands, so those Cazadors don't get much damage on my good units as he tries to wheel that other line infantry around. He does get a nice cav charge downhill on our flank here, and he's countercharged by the general's bodyguard. And that Spanish cav is going to rout. And now you can see that the Spanish assault here on the flank has been beaten back, and they are giving up ground. Back up the slope of the hill. They are being reinforced now with some more line infantry of the Spanish player, I think from the center. And you can see the cav tried to shoot through the valley, and I was able to get some shots off with my lines. You can see the dead horses there. Sometimes when you try to make movements, the computer is going to find the fastest path. So you really got to pay attention to that, because sometimes it's going to take you right in enemies' shots, which you don't want. Obviously. No kidding. Alright, so here you can see things are pretty status quo here. The Spanish are trying to fortify their position as they have wheeled back, and we're starting to gain some ground back on our right flank. Here you can see where we're wedged out in kind of a salient. And I'm going to bring my rifles up, try to get some more shots to whittle the Spanish player in. I really, what my goal is, I really want to get rid of the remnants of the Spanish force here so that I can concentrate back up at the top of the hill. But at this point, unfortunately, my ally here, Gunny, he does end up dropping. So now it has been turned over to the AI, which, if you know the AI, it's going to be problematic at best. So now things are going to go from a fairly good position to now a fairly precarious one. So here I was planning this push while he was dropping, and I do end up carrying through with it. And sadly, he was going to be pushing with me, and that ended up not happening. So yeah. Disaster. All right, you can see the Spanish cav and the Spanish players looking to make a push now that they know that the AI is now controlling our allies' units as it goes all over the place. So yeah, it's unfortunate here. But at this point, you can see our ally on this flank is going to get a great cav charge off on these Cazadors. But you can't sustain that fight. It's best to pull that cav out, then run that militia up and let them do the dirty work. But he leaves that cav in. I think he ends up losing it. He might not. But here you can see I'm now being pressured pretty hard. Pretty difficult pressure being put on me by this Spanish player. And at this point now, the other Spanish player is looking to set up for a push to pincer me in on this woodland. As you can see, I tried to get a cav charge in, like I was saying my ally did, and I ended up losing both of my cav there with a bad charge. You can see the Cazadors up there at the top of the screen coming up with all the Spanish lines as they're going to, as I said, try to pincer me in the woods. Luckily for them, their Spanish player here is holding out with a pretty thin force, and I'm prepared for their assault. As their Cazadors come up, we'll see what type of shots they get in. And they are, of course, 125 range, so they're going to be able to reach out and touch someone from a pretty long distance. And here comes their shots in, and their cav again making a push through the valley region where my line is going to be able to get some shots off on them. And I'm trying to reel back my left so that I am not pincered in, but I am being put in a pretty bad spot because the cav is coming on me pretty fast and hard. And I'm trying to get my rifleman out of that situation. And my goal was to fold my whole not my whole flank, but my whole flank over to the left. But that situation goes from possible to impossible in a pretty quick hurry, because the Spanish player here is just holding out somehow, some way. So I'm trying to get a cav charge in with my general's bodyguard. Sadly enough, he gets set before I do, and there goes my general. There's my man. His head just pummeled down to the ground. My heroic death. Look at me. I was so dapper, and I just bit the dust. But what can you do? So I end up losing my general's bodyguard in that whole fiasco. Here come the Spanish, putting pressure on me pretty strong there. So now I'm forced to deal with this pretty bad situation. As you can see, I'm trying to peel back, and I'm heroing out one line infantry in the woods to take on all the Spanish while I try to reel back. But the Spanish line catches me in melee here with their cav on the left, and I'm forced to then push that issue because I can't pull them out. So now I'm trying to make a melee rush, because sometimes when things happen in the heat of bad situations, you just kind of go with it. As you can see now, I'm trying to move my forces downhill. My goal now is to kill the remnants of the Spanish force downhill and let my ally at the top of the hill hold them off. Our flanking ally that was on the left flank is pretty much dead at this point. I think he has one Swiss guard left, maybe two. So it's just basically us versus the remnants of the bottom two players. So it's almost a 2v4 situation. As you see, I actually get a pretty decent shot off with my Bulkleys on the cav. I stopped in time and was able to get shots off with the Bulkleys. But unfortunately, I'm right in front of these Cazadors, so they're getting shots in. They're also going to take some residual shots in their cav. I am going to start routing them off. My ally is helping me quite a bit versus these Spanish lines up at the top. And we are going to, I think, route off this wall and guard here. We catch that wall and guard in a rock and a hard place with the Bulkley, a line infantry, and a couple other units, and he's surrounded way behind enemy lines, so he's going to break, and that's a pretty important unit for us to break with a pretty decent amount of men. He was in the 40s when we broke him. So now I'm going to try and run my line infantry back up to help reinforce my ally against these Spanish units in the woodland and see if we can reclaim the woods, as I was in confidence that I could kill off this force with what I was pushing into melee, which I do kill one of the Cazadors, but the cav over there is just relentless on me. And we have three of the Spanish lines, as he has now killed off the majority of my ally at the bottom. And this is the point where I think he's got just the one Swiss guard left. Now, this is the remnants of my Gunny's forces that had went to AI. So they are being ridiculous, going head first into charge. And you can see here now our ally on the flank has regained all this ground at the top of the hill and has a pretty overwhelming force. If he was a little more aggressive, I think we could have probably taken out all three of these line infantry and that Cazador. But it is what it is. And here I'm going to get cav charged on my Bulkley here. I do end up taking out a couple of his cav on that charge, but he is going to take out that one, and he's going to have his general bodyguard charge my grenadier. And he's, I guess it's just barely able to hold on with that. His cav comes in, mostly hits the back of his general's bodyguard, which really saves a lot of the brunt of that charge for my grenadiers, so that really bails my grenadiers out. They were on the brink of breaking. If he probably stayed in melee, probably would have broke. As you can see here, I've reclaimed the woodland. We'll watch my Bulkleys get some shots back off on the Spanish as we are on either side of the woods here. And get some nice volleys in. Love my Bulkley. This is my favorite unit. As I am now, as I got my volleys, I'm taking on more units than what I have, so I'm going to volley and fall back out of that situation. And obviously I got all this cav on my flank, so I'm trying to deal with that the best I can. I got my long range TLRs, getting some shots in on that flanking light dragoon, and trying to get as many shots in as I can with my lines as I fall back. I'm going to use one line to cover as I roll back my Bulkley. Bulkley is my most important unit, so I want to get him back, and I force my 2 units up here. I have cleared out the rest of the units at the bottom to try to help force back that cav. Problem with that I have right now is I have no cav support, and I'm spread out too thin, and that's going to be my Achilles heel in this match, because that's a problem. Cav is king in this game. Once you leave cav, it's pretty devastating. You see the Swiss Guard taking on all these units up here, doing a fantastic job. Got another Swiss Guard here. That's my allies. If he just rolled it uphill, I mean, we would have taken out all those flanking units. Instead, he went from, I think it was like in the 90s, and he's taken 2 volleys from 2 line infantry, and he's lucky to come out of that with 60 men. But he is going to go in with the charge. The Swiss are very strong with the charge and gets a good charge off on that line infantry, so we'll see how that ends up going. Over here we've got the Roi de Pont, and they are going to get some shots in. Now they aren't necessarily really good with melee charges, but you see up in the back just behind me, the Spanish are coming up. They're pincering me, so I'm left with no choice. I've got to be aggressive here. If I'm not, I'm going to be shot from both sides. So this is the time where you've got to be aggressive in these type of situations when you're being pincered, and hope that one of the opposing players is not as fast as you are, and in that case the player on the bottom is not. So I'm going to attack him, and I am trying to chase down these Cazadors. They're too fast for me to chase down, so I'm going to countercharge in the back of these Spanish lines. So now I'm going to try and pincer them. Unfortunately, that cav is just what the problem is. It's really causing a super problem. Now look at these Swiss Guards. They were able to go into melee with this line and not lose 1 man, but I am going to countercharge with my Bulkleys and kill that Spanish line that was left there. And you can see here now those lines are catching up with me, and I'm going to lose one of the units here, but we are going to get into melee with both of these other Spanish units, and the cav has routed off the remnants of the other forces there. I do have that 1 grenadier over there versus a general's bodyguard, which I am going to, I believe, rout, but I think I lose my grenadier as well. Maybe not. You see that those darn cav, they're just causing me so much grief. As I ended up getting, you can see I basically pincered them with one Bulkley. So we got the Spanish here boxed in. Those 3 line infantry that were coming over there, we got them boxed in. This is a perfect situation. Things are really starting to turn. My ally is unfortunately stretched extremely thin. He's got units up all over the place. I mean, he's doing a really good job holding on. This is Sky is his name. He's got 1 carabiner down there. Let's see, but he's in a pretty tough spot because I'm basically going off like a madman with my charges, and with my relentless attack on these 2 to 3 different Spanish. Actually, I'm fighting versus 3 different players right here, and I'm luckily getting that assistance from my ally. And I do have, again, we have that 1 Swiss Guard from our ally on the flank. He's got that 1 Swiss Guard left, So that is giving us some help as well. As you can see, that damn cav got one left down here to deal with. And two line infantry, the cazadors, which my allies are going after. And now, guess what? Our opponent here that was facing me, he's got 4 walling guards that were hidden this whole time that he was not using for some reason. I have no idea why, because that could have changed the complexion of this battle right from the start. That's why when you use your army, you got to use your full entire army, because we really have been able to turn the situation with one of our players dropping. This, if he used all those units after our ally dropped, we would have had no chance. Now, if our ally was in the game and he had those guards and used them, we would have still fared pretty good having that extra human player. But here you can see I'm speeding it up because it's pretty much the end of the battle, as we do get some infantry charges in on these 2 remaining Spanish lines, routing them off. We've cleared the whole bottom of the battlefield. Unfortunately, now they are being reinforced with these fresh damn walling guards, so that's a problem. Up here on the top, I think that my ally is in pretty good shape, probably better shape than he's given himself credit for. Looks like our opponent is out of ammo with the cazador, so he's going into a charge. Now he's got 2 guards here versus 3 line, and that cazador, which breaks, and he is going to really whittle these lines down, which we're in pretty good shape. He's got one of them down to 70 already, and it just well, let's see. I'm going to slow it down so we can watch this fight. But you can see this Mason Duro, it's getting some great shots in. Already got that line down to 64. Got to get in there, get aggressive. My ally hasn't lost 1 unit, not the militia, not anything, up against these 3 units. And he's really making some great headway on it. So now he's got both the guards going after this 1 flanking unit, which is a good idea. Get rid of each unit one at a time. And he's trying to countercharge because he knows he's going to get ripped by that guard, but he never gets into him. He was hoping to get into melee with them so he could slow the shooting down, because the guards shoot so fast. So now these guards are just, he's got 2 militia versus 2 line. This is a win-win here. So he's trying to get set up. He's too much sorting. You just got to get set and shoot, because it takes time to set with guards. So that's valuable time loss. So now they're finally sorting up again. He could have been shooting. So now he's starting to get shots in. Losing one of the militia. So it's 4v3 and he's depleted. But this is a situation you just stay in that fight. I think he wins that fight with those 2 guards versus basically 4 depleted lines. I think he wins that fight. So we're fast forwarding it. As you can see, that this is pretty much the end of the line. Try to get what kills we can in. Now, again, both of these teams, if you aren't aware, both of these teams came in with a perfect record. France came in with a record of 1-0, and that's because they had a bye week. And Spain was coming in with a record of 2-0. Again, this is week 3. So it is going to be Spain taking this victory over the French. So France is going to fall now to 1-1 on the season. So they're even. So even though they've taken a loss, they at least do not have a losing record. And then you have the Spanish, which are the only team in the league or the only nation in the league to have a perfect record of 3-0. So yeah, you got that going for you, Spain. Nice. So Spain is the number 1 seeded team in the whole league. Man, they're popping off. So there we go. End of the battle. Nicely done, Spain. Very good, hard-fought battle. As you can see here, the final statistics. What am I can't even think anymore. Anyways, if you did enjoy this battle, don't forget to... Oh, excuse me, I'm burping. Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe, and we will see you for the next battle in week 3. We got some great ones coming up, guys. I'm positive you guys are going to really enjoy them. We'll see you then.